The courtroom wasn't quiet. It only pretended to be. You could hear it in the breathing, human breathing, tight, shallow, impatient. And then one other rhythm, softer breaths, steady and calm. Natalie Warren sat at the witness table with both hands resting on the smooth wood. 34 years old, dark hair pulled back in a plain ponytail, and sunglasses, those dark lenses that told the room what it wanted to decide about her before she ever spoke. Natalie was blind, had been since she was 16. A car accident, traumatic brain injury, permanent vision loss. 18 years of living in a world built for people who could see, and 18 years of being underestimated the moment she walked into any room. But she wasn't here today because she was blind. She was here because she was a witness to murder, not with her eyes, with her ears. And beside her, lying perfectly still on the courtroom floor like a shadow that breathed, was Atlas, a German shepherd, 4 years old, black and tan coat, guide dog, do not distract. Atlas's gaze moved constantly, calm, focused, patient, not anxious, working, protecting Natalie the way he always did, without drama, without noise. Across the courtroom sat the defendant, Marcus Chen, 42, investment banker, designer suit, Rolex catching the light every time he shifted, the kind of face you'd expect in boardrooms and private clubs, not crime scene photos. A face people wanted to believe was incapable of violence. But Natalie had heard him kill someone, had heard every second of it, and the room had decided that wasn't enough. At the prosecution table, Assistant District Attorney James Morrison sat with the posture of a man carrying too much weight and not enough certainty. 50 years old, career public servant, the kind of prosecutor who didn't chase headlines, he chased convictions. This case was built on Natalie, and the defense was dismantling her like a careless demolition crew. The victim was Christina Zhao, 28, Marcus Chen's assistant, found dead in her apartment 6 months ago, 1 gunshot wound to the chest. The official story was neat, clean, convenient. Suicide. But Natalie knew better, because she'd been there. Not inside Christina's apartment, next door, close enough to hear everything through the wall. She heard the argument, the gunshot, the body hitting the floor.
Ms. Warren, you've testified that you heard my client's voice, but you've never met my client. You've never heard him speak before that night. So tell us. She paused, letting the room lean in. How can you possibly be certain it was him? Natalie's jaw tightened. I know what I heard. But you can't see him, Caroline pressed. You can't identify him in a lineup. You can't even point to him in this courtroom. I don't need to see him to know. You don't need to see him, Caroline cut in, turning slightly toward the jury. But the jury does. They need evidence, facts, not assumptions from someone who admits she can't see what happened. James Morrison stood. Objection! Counsel is badgering the witness. Overruled, Judge Rodriguez said, voice flat. But Ms. Pierce, land the plane. Caroline turned to the jury again. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Warren seems sincere, but sincerity isn't evidence. She heard sounds through a wall, sounds that could have been anything, a television, a movie, an argument between roommates. Then she looked back at Natalie. You have no physical evidence, no visual confirmation, just your interpretation of sound. And on that basis, the prosecution wants you to convict my client of murder. Caroline returned to her table, papers neat. The defense rests, Your Honor.
Judge Rodriguez's gaze moved to James Morrison. Mr. Morrison, redirect? James rose slowly, like his spine weighed double. He looked defeated. "No, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "Then the witness is dismissed. Miss Warren, you're free to—" Atlas barked, sharp, urgent, not fear, not noise, a warning. The entire courtroom turned at once, but Atlas wasn't looking at the jury, wasn't looking at the judge. Atlas was staring directly at Marcus Chen, staring with an intensity that made people shift in their seats. Caroline's irritation snapped through the silence. "Your Honor, can someone control that animal?" "He's a service dog," Natalie said, firmer. "He doesn't bark unless there's a reason." Judge Rodriguez leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "Miss Warren, is your dog all right?" Natalie's hand found Atlas's head. The dog was rigid, trembling slightly. He's alerting to something." "Alerting to what?" "I don't know, but he's trained to detect." Atlas barked again. And then he did something he had never done in a courtroom. He broke position, left Natalie's side, and walked directly toward Marcus Chen. "Bailiff!" Caroline shot up. "Remove that dog!" But Judge Rodriguez raised her hand. "Wait." Atlas stopped 3 feet from Marcus, sat, and stared. The courtroom froze. Marcus shifted, voice tight. "Your Honor, this is absurd. This animal is clearly disturbed." Atlas's nose twitched. Then he moved, not toward Marcus's face, toward Marcus's briefcase. The expensive leather briefcase sitting at Marcus's feet like it belonged there more than truth did. Atlas sat beside it, raised one paw, a trained alert position, precise, unmistakable. Natalie's voice cut clean through the moment. "He's alerting to gunshot residue." The courtroom erupted. Judge Rodriguez slammed her gavel. "Order! Order!" Caroline was already fighting the air with her hands. "This is theater! That dog can't possibly—" "That dog," Natalie said, voice shaking now with the weight of being heard too late, "is trained in explosive and firearm detection. I didn't mention it because it wasn't relevant, but Atlas spent 2 years with the canine unit before he became my guide dog." She swallowed. "He was retired after an injury, but he never lost his training." She turned her face toward where she knew the judge sat. "He's telling us there's gunshot residue on that briefcase." James Morrison was moving before the room could catch up. "Your Honor, I'm requesting the briefcase be seized and tested immediately." "Absolutely not," Caroline snapped. "Fourth Amendment—" "The dog just gave probable cause," Judge Rodriguez said, cold as steel. She turned to the bailiff. "Secure the briefcase. No one touches it until we get a warrant." Marcus Chen's face drained. "This is insane. I use that briefcase every day. I could have touched anything." "Then you have nothing to worry about," Judge Rodriguez replied. "We'll test it. If the dog is wrong, we continue. If he's right—" She let the sentence die on the bench. The courtroom understood what she meant. But what happened next was worse for Marcus Chen, because Atlas wasn't finished. The dog left the briefcase, walked back toward the witness stand, and then, without hesitation, he went underneath it. Natalie heard it and stiffened. "Atlas, heel!" Atlas ignored her, something he never did. "Atlas!" A soft whine, then the sound of something scraping against wood. Atlas emerged. In his mouth, held gently like a fragile truth, was something small, metallic. He walked straight to James Morrison, dropped it at his feet, sat, waited. James looked down, and his face went pale. "Your Honor!" He pulled a glove from his pocket, evidence gloves, the kind you don't wear unless the day is about to split open. He picked it up, held it high. A bullet casing, a 9mm casing, and on it a smear of dried blood and the ghost of a fingerprint. The courtroom erupted again. Marcus Chen stood so fast his chair scraped. "That's planted! Someone put that there!" "When?" James fired back, voice rising. "This courtroom has been locked since this morning. The only people here are the jury, the staff, and us. So who planted it, Mr. Chen?" He stepped forward. "Me? The judge? Your own lawyer?" Marcus's mouth opened, closed. Caroline Pierce was gathering her papers with hands that suddenly didn't look so steady. Judge Rodriguez's voice sliced through everything. "Everyone sit down, now." The room obeyed. Judge Rodriguez looked at Atlas. The dog sat beside Natalie again, calm as if he'd done nothing but guide her across a street. Then the judge spoke, slow and precise. "Bailiff, bag that casing as evidence. Handle it like your career depends on it." She turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm calling a recess. You are dismissed for the day while we process this evidence. You will not discuss this case with anyone. Am I clear?" The jury nodded, eyes wide. They filed out in silence. Judge Rodriguez turned to Marcus Chen. "Mr. Chen, you're not leaving this jurisdiction. Your bail is revoked pending analysis of this evidence." "Your Honor, you can't—" "I just did." She nodded to the bailiff. "Take him into custody." The handcuffs clicked, a sound that always feels louder than it is. Marcus was led away. As he passed Natalie's table, he stopped, looked down at Atlas. Atlas stared back, calm, patient, victorious. "Damn dog," Marcus muttered. "Keep moving," the bailiff ordered. And Marcus Chen, investment banker, boardroom prince, was walked out like what he really was, a man who thought the world would never notice what he dropped. Before we go any further, quick pause, just so we're all on the same page. What you're listening to is a fictional courtroom story. These aren't real people, it's not a real case, and it's not legal advice. It's a story about being underestimated, about truth hiding in plain sight, and about how sometimes the most important witness isn't the one everyone's watching. If you're enjoying stories like this, quiet courtroom tension, emotional twists, and moments where justice finally shows up, subscribing really helps us grow. It lets YouTube know these stories matter, and it helps us keep making more of them for you. So if this story has pulled you in even a little, tap subscribe, give the video a like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next verdict. And tell us something in the comments. Where are you listening from right now? Late at night? On a break? With headphones on while the world's quiet? We actually read those, and it means a lot seeing where you're joining us from. All right, let's go back. Back to the night Natalie Warren heard something she couldn't unhear. Back to the moment no one believed her, and back to the truth that was waiting, patiently, to be found. 6 months earlier, October 14th, 9:47 p.m. Natalie Warren sat in her apartment listening to an audiobook, Pride and Prejudice. She'd played it so many times she didn't need the words anymore. She needed the calm. Atlas lay at her feet, not asleep exactly. Guide dogs don't truly sleep. They rest with one ear open. Natalie's apartment was small but controlled, everything where it belonged. When you can't see, order isn't a preference, it's survival. She'd lived there 2 years, apartment 4B, 4th floor, 1 bedroom, old building, thin walls. Her neighbor in 4C was Christina Zhao. Natalie had met her once in the hallway, brief, polite, forgettable. Christina always sounded like she was moving, like her life had a schedule that didn't breathe. Natalie didn't know her, didn't know she was sleeping with her boss, didn't know she'd discovered fraud, didn't know she'd become a problem that someone decided to erase. At 9:52, Natalie heard voices through the wall. Not a TV, not music. Arguing. A man's voice, deep, angry. "You're not thinking clearly." Christina's voice, higher, tight. "I'm thinking perfectly clearly. What you're doing is illegal." "What we're doing," the man snapped. "You helped set it up." "I didn't know what it was." "You knew enough." Natalie turned down the audiobook. She didn't want to listen, but thin walls don't care about consent. Atlas lifted his head, ears forward, listening. "I could lose my license," Christina shouted. "I could go to prison." "You won't if you keep your mouth shut." "I can't keep doing this, Marcus." Natalie froze at the name. Marcus. Atlas stood, walked to the wall, pressed his nose against it. "Atlas, come," Natalie whispered. He didn't move. His body stiffened, the way it only did when the world turned dangerous. "You don't have a choice," Marcus said. "Yes, I do. I'm going to HR. I'm telling them everything." "No, you're not. You can't stop me." Silence. Then Marcus again, calm now, terrifyingly calm. "Actually, I can." A loud bang. Sharp, unmistakable. Atlas barked once, warning. Natalie jolted. Then a heavy thud. A body. Atlas whined, scratched at the wall, frantic. "Atlas, no, come here." He obeyed, shaking, heart racing beneath Natalie's hands. Footsteps next door. Pacing. A phone ringing. Then Marcus's voice, lower, controlled, on the phone. "It's done. Clean it up." A pause. "I don't care how. Make it look like she did it herself." Another pause. "Good. I'll be gone in 10 minutes. Natalie grabbed her phone, called 911. "I think someone's been shot," she told the operator. "Next door, apartment 4C. She sat on the floor, one arm around Atlas like an anchor. Atlas stared at the wall like he could see through it, like he knew exactly what was lying on the other side. Police arrived 12 minutes later. Natalie heard the pounding on Christina's door. "Police, open up!" No response. "We're coming in." The door splintered. Shouting, "We've got a body! Female, gunshot wound to the chest. No pulse, she's gone." Atlas barked again, not at the wall this time, at Natalie's door. Then a knock. "Miss Warren? Detective Sarah Lynn, I need to speak with you." Natalie opened. Detective Lynn stood in the hallway, mid-40s, sharp eyes, wrinkled suit. Atlas stared past her, down the hallway, toward the elevator. "Is your dog all right?" Lynn asked. "He's agitated," Natalie said. "He was canine before he became my guide dog." Detective Lynn blinked. A canine dog? Explosives and firearms detection? Retired after an injury. Lynn's attention sharpened. "Tell me what you heard." Natalie told her everything. The argument, the gunshot, the phone call, the words. Lynn took notes fast. "Did you see anyone leave?" Natalie's mouth tightened. "I can't see anything." "Right, sorry. Did you hear anything?" "Yes, heavy footsteps. A man. He left about 5 minutes before you arrived. I heard the elevator." Detective Lynn nodded. Then Atlas barked again, once, sharp. Lynn stopped. Atlas was staring at Lynn's jacket pocket. "Why is he doing that?" Lynn asked. "I don't know," Natalie whispered. "He's alerting." "Alerting how?" "Like he does when he detects firearm residue." Lynn slowly reached into her pocket, pulled out an evidence bag. Inside was a glove. She'd taken it from the scene. Atlas sat, raised one paw. The alert. Detective Lynn's face changed. "Is he reacting to this?" "Yes," Natalie said. "There's gunshot residue on that glove." Lynn stared at the bag like it had just spoken. "This glove wasn't there when we first arrived," Lynn murmured. "Someone dropped it when we broke down the door." She looked at Natalie. "Miss Warren, I think your dog just found our first piece of evidence." 3 days after Christina Zhao died, the city did what cities do best. It moved on. A young woman was dead. A file was opened. A conclusion was written. And the world found a way to make tragedy feel administrative. Natalie didn't hear the conclusion from a press conference. She heard it the way she heard everything now, through other people's voices. Detective Sarah Lynn called her late afternoon. Her tone was careful, like she was stepping around broken glass. "Ms. Warren, the medical examiner ruled it suicide." Natalie didn't speak at first. Atlas's breathing was the only sound in the room. Then she said, very softly, "No." Sarah sighed. "The evidence supports it." "The evidence you bothered to look for," Natalie replied. Sarah was quiet. Natalie could hear the shift in her breathing, the way people breathe when they're trying to stay patient. "Ms. Warren, the apartment door wasn't forced, no sign of struggle. The gun was registered to Christina Zhao, gunshot residue on her hand." Natalie's jaw tightened. "And the man's voice, the phone call, it's done, clean it up, you just filed that under imagination?" Sarah's voice lowered. "We can't arrest someone based on what you heard." "I'm not asking you to arrest. I'm asking you to investigate." Sarah softened. "We did." Natalie let out a sharp laugh, humorless. "You didn't even search the elevator logs. You didn't interview building staff. You didn't canvass the floor." "We did basic canvassing." "Basic," Natalie repeated, tasting the word like something rotten. And then she said the thing she'd been holding back since that night. "My dog alerted to gunshot residue on a glove. He did it before any of you even knew it mattered." Sarah's tone tightened again. "We tested the glove. And?" "Inconclusive. It could have been contaminated. It could have been dropped by EMT or a cop or maintenance." Natalie gripped the edge of her kitchen counter so hard her fingers ached. "Atlas isn't a guesser." Sarah hesitated. "I'm not saying he is." "Then why are you treating him like he is?" "Because that was the truth, wasn't it? Not that Atlas was wrong. That Atlas didn't fit inside their neat conclusion." Sarah spoke carefully. "Ms. Warren, even if I believed every word you said—" "I'm not asking you to believe me," Natalie cut in. "I'm asking you to respect the possibility that you're wrong." A pause. Then Sarah said, quieter, "I'm following the evidence I can use." Natalie swallowed. "Then you're following the wrong trail." Sarah exhaled. "I'm sorry." Natalie hung up before her voice could betray her. But she didn't stop. Not after hearing Christina's final moment through a wall. Not after hearing a man treat a human life like a mess to be wiped away. Not after hearing the city stamp "suicide" on a file and shut the door. Natalie didn't see, but Natalie remembered, and Natalie listened. Natalie did her own digging the way blind people often do it, with patience, with technology, and with the kind of attention sighted people sometimes forget to use. She started with Christina's social media, using a screen reader, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, post after post of a young woman climbing the ladder with professional brightness. But something kept catching in Natalie's chest, not the photos, the tone, the exhaustion tucked beneath the smiles. Then she found it. Christina worked at Chen Investment Group. Her boss, Marcus Chen. Natalie pulled up photos from company events. She used a description service, an app that connected blind users with volunteers who described what was on the screen. One volunteer described a photo slowly. "The man standing beside Christina looks like mid-40s, Asian, expensive suit. He's very close to her, one hand on her lower back. He's wearing a Rolex. He's holding a leather briefcase." Natalie stopped the audio. "Repeat that last part." "He's holding a leather briefcase." Natalie didn't know why it mattered yet, only that something about it felt anchored, like a detail that wanted to become important. She saved the description. Then she went deeper. Christina had a blog. It wasn't popular, it wasn't flashy, but it was honest in the way anonymous writing can be. Posts about stress, corporate pressure, integrity, ethical dilemmas. Then the last post, dated October 12th, 2 days before Christina died. Natalie listened as her screen reader read the words aloud. Sometimes you have to choose between your career and your conscience. I've made my choice. Whatever happens next, I'll know I did the right thing. Natalie replayed it 3 times. Atlas lay beside her, calm, but his ears shifted when her breathing changed. That post didn't sound like someone planning suicide. It sounded like someone preparing for a fight. Natalie called Detective Lynn again. No answer. She left a message, then another, then another. Finally, Sarah picked up. "Miss Warren." "Natalie," she corrected. "Stop calling me like I'm a problem in a file. I have evidence." "It's not evidence," Sarah said, already tired. "It's motive," Natalie shot back. "It's a timeline. It's a man named Marcus. It's Christina saying she made a choice and 2 days later she's dead." Sarah exhaled slowly. "Miss Warren, Natalie. Natalie, you can't open a murder investigation based on blog posts." "So what do you open it on?" Natalie asked, voice low. "A convenient story?" Sarah didn't answer. Natalie knew what silence meant in police work. It meant, I'm not going to say the quiet part out loud. Natalie hung up again, but this time she didn't call the police back. She called the only people who could do something when police wouldn't, the district attorney's office. The receptionist tried to redirect her. The assistant tried to postpone her. Natalie didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She did something better. She was persistent. 2 days later, she sat in a small office with ADA James Morrison. James was the kind of man who sounded like he'd spent his life talking people through hard truths. Calm voice, controlled pace, not arrogant. He listened to Natalie's story without interrupting. When she finished, there was a long silence. Then he said, "This is compelling." Natalie held her breath. "But it's not enough," he added, and the hope that rose inside her immediately had to find somewhere else to stand. "What would be enough?" Natalie asked. "Something physical," James said. "Something you can put in a bag, test, and show to a jury." "I have Atlas," Natalie replied. James paused. "A dog's alert is helpful, but it's not proof. It detected gunshot residue on a glove that could belong to anyone." "It belonged to the killer," Natalie said, and her voice wasn't emotional. It was flat, certain. James leaned back. "Give me 2 weeks," he said finally. "Let me look into Marcus Chen. If I find anything at all, I'll reopen this." Natalie's throat tightened. "And if you don't?" James didn't sugarcoat it. "Then I'm sorry, but I can't take a man to trial on sound through a wall." Natalie nodded once. 2 weeks. She stood. Atlas stood with her. But before she left, Natalie turned toward James, toward the direction of his voice. "Mr. Morrison, I'm not asking you to win." James waited. "I'm asking you not to let her disappear into paperwork." James didn't respond immediately. Then quietly, "I won't." James Morrison did what prosecutors do when they sense truth hiding under something clean. He pulled at threads. Marcus Chen looked spotless on the surface, but spotless men often spend money on cleaning. James found financial irregularities, offshore accounts, fraudulent investments, shell companies like Shadows, and Christina Zhao's name appeared in the administrative trail, small, repeated, necessary. She'd helped set it up, maybe unknowingly, maybe not. But then she'd figured it out. James recovered emails, encrypted, but not enough. "Christina, this is fraud. I can't be part of this." "Marcus, you're already part of this. If I go down, you go down." "Christina, then we both go down. I'm reporting it to the SEC." Last email, dated October 13th. Christina died October 14th. Motive: strong, but still not proof of murder. Then James found something else. Marcus Chen owned a 9mm handgun, same caliber as the gun that killed Christina. Registered, legal. But when James demanded production, Marcus couldn't produce it. "I lost it," Marcus said smoothly. "Filed a report months ago." James checked. No report. "Mr. Chen," James pressed, "you're required to report a lost firearm within 48 hours. Marcus shrugged. "I forgot." James stared at him. "You forgot you lost a gun." Marcus's lawyer stepped in, sharp. "My client has answered your questions." James walked out with nothing he could charge yet, but he was close. Then the lab called. "Mr. Morrison," the technician said, "we ran additional tests on evidence from the Zhao case." James sat up. "What tests?" "The glove that was recovered. We tested the interior for DNA, sweat, skin cells." James' voice dropped. "And?" "We have a full profile, not in CODIS." James's pulse kicked. "If I give you a suspect sample, we can compare." James didn't smile, but something inside him did. "Thank you," he said. "I know exactly who to test." James went before a judge. He brought the emails, the motive, the missing gun lie, the glove DMA profile. The judge read, thought, then spoke. "I'll grant the warrant, but Mr. Morrison, this is your last shot. If it doesn't match, you're done." James nodded. "I understand." Marcus fought it. Hard. Fourth Amendment, harassment, fishing expedition. But the warrant stood. And Marcus, banker, polished, powerful, had to hand over his cheek swab like any other man. The sample went to the lab, and the city held its breath without knowing it. 3 weeks later, the lab result landed on James's desk, a single word that turned the whole case from possibility into inevitability. Match. The DNA inside the glove belonged to Marcus Chen. He'd worn it, he'd been there, and no amount of money could talk DNA into silence. James called Natalie. "We got him," James said. Natalie's breath caught. "DNA match. I'm filing murder charges today." Natalie didn't cry. She didn't cheer. She only whispered, "Finally." "And Natalie, I need you to testify." "I will." "The defense is going to tear you apart." "Let them," Natalie said. James hesitated, then added something that sounded almost like instinct. "And Natalie, bring Atlas." "To court?" "To court," James repeated. "That dog is the reason we have this case, and I have a feeling he might matter again." Natalie's hand found Atlas's head. Atlas leaned into it, calm, like he already knew. The trial started on a Monday in April. Jury selection took 2 days. 12 people who didn't know they were about to be asked to choose between a clean story and a messy truth. By the time opening statements came, the courtroom had that familiar hunger, the quiet appetite for certainty. James Morrison stood for the prosecution. He didn't pace, he didn't shout. He spoke like a man laying bricks. Marcus Chen murdered Christina Zhao because she was going to expose his crimes, he said. He shot her, staged it as suicide, and nearly got away with it. Then he turned slightly, toward Natalie. But he made one mistake. He dropped a glove, and a blind woman's service dog detected gunshot residue on it before investigators even realized it mattered. That glove contains Marcus Chen's DNA. Caroline Pierce stood next. And Caroline was not the kind of defense attorney who begged, she commanded. "The prosecution's case is built on coincidence and conjecture," she said. "Yes, Mr. Chen's DNA was on a glove, but that glove could have been dropped at any time. There is no proof he was in that apartment on the night Ms. Zhao died." Then she faced the jury, voice velvet. "And their star witness?" She glanced at Natalie, just enough. A blind woman who heard sounds through a wall and decided those sounds meant murder. Caroline's eyes narrowed slightly. That is not evidence. That is interpretation. And interpretation is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury listened, some leaning in, some leaning back, but all of them measuring Natalie before she ever took the stand. Day 4. Natalie took the witness stand, with Atlas guiding her. The dog moved with smooth precision, leading her past the stares, the doubt, the heavy curiosity. Natalie sat. Atlas lay at her feet. James began gently. "Miss Warren, tell the jury what you heard on October 14th. Natalie told it like she lived it. The argument, the name Marcus, the gunshot, the thud, the phone call. It's done. Clean it up. Did Christina call him by name? James asked. Yes, Natalie answered. She called him Marcus. Then James did something careful. He played a voice recording, Marcus Chen speaking at a company meeting. And then he played the relevant portion from Natalie's 911 call where she repeated what she heard. Is that the same voice? James asked. Natalie didn't hesitate. Yes, that's him. Caroline Pierce rose for cross, and the temperature in the room changed. Caroline didn't need anger. She used precision. Miss Warren, Caroline said, you're blind. Yes. You cannot see my client. No. You cannot point him out in this courtroom. No. You cannot identify him in a lineup. No. So your entire accusation rests on sound. Natalie kept her chin level. Yes. Caroline smiled slightly. Sounds can be deceiving, can't they? Not to me, Natalie said. Caroline tilted her head. Because you're blind, your hearing is better? Yes. But it's not perfect, Caroline said softly. No sense is perfect. Natalie's mouth tightened. So you could be wrong. I'm not. Caroline took one step closer. But you can't prove that, can you? Natalie's voice stayed steady. I can prove I heard what I heard. Through a wall? Caroline repeated, voice syruped with doubt. In an old building where sound echoes and distorts? Natalie didn't move. Caroline's eyes flicked toward Atlas. And your guide dog, Caroline continued, was a failed police dog, wasn't he? Natalie's jaw clenched. He was injured, not unreliable. But he failed certification tests, Caroline pressed. After his injury, yes or no, Miss Warren? Natalie swallowed once. Yes, after his injury he couldn't pass the physical tests. His detection ability was never compromised. Caroline smiled again, small, cruel. According to whom? According to his training records. Caroline paused. And you can't see those records, can you? James objected. Harassment. Sustained, Judge Rodriguez snapped. Miss Pierce, move on. But the damage had been done. Natalie could feel it. Not with her eyes, with the air. The jury shifting. The subtle skepticism returning like a tide. By day 6, Caroline had called experts, an audio expert explaining how thin walls distort sound, a psychologist on memory decay and false certainty. By the end of the day, even James looked like a man watching his case slip through his fingers. And then, day 7 arrived. The day everything changed. James called Marcus Chen to the stand. Marcus walked like the courtroom was a networking event. Calm, controlled, polished. He sat and answered every question like he'd rehearsed it in a mirror. "Mr. Chen," James asked, "where were you on the night of October 14th? "At home, alone." "Can anyone confirm that?" "No," Marcus said evenly, "but I have no reason to lie." "Did you visit Christina Zhao that night?" "No." "Did you kill her?" "Absolutely not." James produced the glove. "Your DNA was found inside this glove. This glove was recovered from Christina Zhao's apartment. Explain that." Marcus shrugged, practiced. "I don't know how my DNA got there. Maybe someone stole it. Maybe it was contaminated. I didn't kill Christina." "Then why did you lie about losing your gun?" "I didn't lie," Marcus said. "I misplaced it." "You misplaced a firearm and didn't report it?" "I forgot." James stared at him for a long moment, then sat down. Caroline didn't even need redirect. Judge Rodriguez glanced at James. "Any further witnesses?" "No, Your Honor. The prosecution rests." Judge Rodriguez turned to Caroline. "Defense rests?" "Yes, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "Closing arguments begin tomorrow." Court was about to adjourn until Natalie rose to leave. Atlas rose with her, and then Atlas froze, staring at Marcus. Marcus was gathering his briefcase, the same expensive leather briefcase he carried like an extension of his identity. Atlas's nose twitched. Then the dog moved, left Natalie's side, walked straight to Marcus. "Bailiff," Caroline barked, "control that animal." Judge Rodriguez lifted a hand. "Wait." Atlas sat beside Marcus's briefcase, raised one paw. The alert. Natalie's voice carried across the courtroom, sharp with recognition. "He's detecting gunshot residue." The courtroom erupted. Judge Rodriguez pounded the gavel. "Order!" She leaned forward. "Mr. Morrison, does this dog have current certification?" James stood quickly. "I can have his handler testify, Your Honor. Atlas is certified for GSR detection, current as of last month." Caroline was already shaking her head. "Your Honor, a dog's reaction isn't probable cause. In this jurisdiction, a certified detection dog's alert can establish probable cause," Judge Rodriguez said. "Bailiff, secure the briefcase." Marcus's face went white. "That's my property." "Not for the moment," Judge Rodriguez replied. Caroline argued, Fourth Amendment, circus, improper. Judge Rodriguez didn't flinch. "Secure it," she repeated, and Marcus Chen sat very still, realizing for the first time that the room wasn't listening to him anymore. The briefcase was tested that night. At 8 a.m. the next morning, the results returned. Positive, extensive gunshot residue. On the handle, on the lining, on the exterior leather. Not a trace. Not a vague contamination. A volume that told a simple story. Someone fired a gun and then handled that briefcase. A lot. James requested an emergency hearing. "This proves Mr. Chen fired a weapon," James argued. "The same caliber weapon used to kill Christina Zhao." Caroline fought back quickly. "My client goes to shooting ranges. This proves nothing beyond the fact he touched something that had residue." James didn't blink. "Then let's see what else the residue leads to." He took a breath. "Your Honor, I request the court allow Atlas to conduct a full search." The room went silent. Caroline stood. "Absolutely not. This is a circus act." "This dog just alerted to residue on an item the defendant handles daily," James replied. "If there's more evidence, he'll find it." Judge Rodriguez considered for a long moment. Then, "I'll allow it. But Mr. Morrison, if this is a waste of the court's time, there will be consequences." "Understood." The courtroom emptied. Only the judge, attorneys, court staff, and Natalie remained. Judge Rodriguez looked down toward Atlas. "Miss Warren, release your dog. Let him work." Natalie unclipped the leash. Her voice was soft now. "Atlas, seek." A command from his old life, a word he hadn't heard in years. Atlas changed instantly. Not emotional, not frantic, purposeful. He moved through the room methodically. Defense table, prosecution table, jury box. Nothing. Then he reached the witness stand, circled it, stopped, sat, paw raised. Natalie's spine tightened. "He's alerting," she whispered. James moved closer. "Where?" "Under the witness box," Natalie said. "There's a gap." James knelt, looked, and saw it. Small, metallic. He pulled on gloves, reached in, and carefully removed a spent bullet casing. The room stopped breathing. James held it up to the light. A 9mm casing, same caliber, and on it a smear of dried blood and the imprint of a partial fingerprint. James' voice dropped. "Your Honor, I think we just found the murder weapon's signature." The casing went to the lab on emergency processing. Everything moved faster now, because truth does that once it's finally seen. The blood was tested, match, Christina Zhao. The fingerprint was tested, match, Marcus Chen. Then ballistics. The casing carried unique striations, tiny mechanical scars from the firing pin and extractor. Those striations matched the bullet that killed Christina. Same gun, same incident. Meaning the casing wasn't random, it wasn't from a range, it was from Christina Zhao's death. James demanded another emergency hearing. "Your Honor, this changes everything. He didn't just kill her, he brought the murder into this courtroom." Caroline was pale now. "Your Honor, there's no proof he dropped that casing. His fingerprint is on it, her blood is on it, and he has been in this courtroom before trial." Judge Rodriguez pulled the calendar. Marcus Chen had attended 2 pretrial hearings in this courtroom, one of them November 8th, 3 weeks after Christina died. Before the evidence was fully processed, before anyone thought to look for a casing hidden under the witness stand, Judge Rodriguez looked directly at Marcus. "Mr. Chen, did you attend the pretrial hearing on November 8th? Marcus's lawyer whispered urgently. Marcus swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor." "Were you carrying your briefcase?" Marcus hesitated. I don't remember." Judge Rodriguez's eyes hardened. "The court has security footage." Caroline stood quickly. "Your Honor, I'd like a recess to consult." "Denied," Judge Rodriguez said. "Answer the question." Marcus's breathing changed. Sweat. Fear. "I don't recall." Judge Rodriguez nodded once, and the bailiff pulled up the security footage. The video played. Marcus entering the courthouse on November 8th, briefcase in hand, walking through security, entering the courtroom, sitting in the gallery, and then, as he stood to leave, something fell from his jacket pocket. A tiny object. It dropped, bounced, rolled under the witness stand. Marcus didn't notice. No one noticed. And it stayed there for 6 months, waiting. James turned to the jury. "He carried the casing into court," James said, voice tight with disbelief. "Probably in the same jacket he wore that night. It fell out, and he left it behind." He stepped forward. He literally left a piece of the murder at the scene of his own trial because he was arrogant enough to believe no one would ever find it. Caroline had no response. Marcus sat frozen. Judge Rodriguez looked at the jury. "You've heard the evidence. We proceed to closing arguments." Closing arguments didn't take long. They didn't need to. James Morrison stood. "Marcus Chen killed Christina Zhao," he said. "We have his DNA on the glove. We have extensive gunshot residue on the briefcase he handles daily. We have a bullet casing with his fingerprint and her blood ballistically matched to the fatal shot." He paused. "And we have a witness who heard him confess." Then he gestured gently toward Atlas, still, calm, focused. "That dog found what trained investigators missed because he was trained to find the truth. And the truth is, Marcus Chen is a murderer." Caroline Pierce stood for her closing, but the room felt the difference. Her voice was still smooth, her words still sharp, but something in her was already conceding. "The prosecution has presented circumstantial evidence," she said. "Coincidences aren't proof beyond a reasonable doubt." Then she sat. The jury didn't look persuaded. They looked done. Deliberation took 3 hours. When the jury returned, the courtroom felt heavier, not with suspense, with inevitability. The foreperson stood, guilty on all counts. Marcus Chen's head dropped into his hands. Christina Zhao's family, parents and sister, sobbed, relief spilling out like grief finally allowed to exhale. Natalie sat quietly, one hand resting on Atlas's head. Atlas didn't celebrate. He didn't need to. He had done his job. 2 weeks later, sentencing. Marcus Chen stood again, but he looked smaller now. Not because the room grew, because his power had evaporated. Judge Rodriguez looked at him as if she'd been waiting years to speak to men like him. "Mr. Chen," she said, "you murdered a young woman to protect financial crimes. You staged her death as suicide. And you were so arrogant you brought evidence of your crime into this courtroom." A pause. "I am sentencing you to life in prison without the possibility of parole." The gavel came down. Marcus was led away in cuffs. Outside the courthouse, reporters rushed Natalie. "Ms. Warren, how does it feel to get justice?" Natalie knelt beside Atlas, fingers finding the familiar curve of his head. "I didn't do this," she said. "Atlas did. He found what everyone missed." She stroked his fur once, steady. "He's not just my guide dog, he's a hero." A reporter asked, "What's next for you?" Natalie smiled. "We're going to help train more dogs like him, dogs that can assist investigations, because Atlas proved something the world keeps forgetting." She paused. "That sometimes the best detective has 4 legs and a nose that doesn't care who you are." Atlas's tail wagged once. Cameras clicked. But Atlas didn't care about cameras. He cared about Natalie and keeping her safe. Always. 6 months later, Natalie launched the Atlas Foundation, a program training dual-purpose service dogs for people with disabilities, dogs trained not only to guide, but to assist law enforcement when needed. "These dogs can change lives," Natalie told a room full of donors. "They changed mine." Christina Zhao's family donated. So did dozens of others. Within a year, 6 dogs were in training. Within 2 years, the program expanded nationwide, and every single dog carried the same mission Atlas proved in courtroom 4B. Find the truth, even when it's hidden, even when people don't want it found. This has been a story about a woman who couldn't see but heard everything, a dog who was more than a guide, he was a detective, and a man who thought money could erase consequences. Marcus Chen thought he got away with murder. He thought no one would notice what he dropped, but he didn't count on Atlas. If this story hit you, subscribe to One Verdict Away. Share it, and tell us in the comments, do you have a service dog story or know a working dog who changed everything? We'll see you in the next verdict.